As Hollywood's love affair with comic books has started to dwindle in recent years, some analysts have suggested that video games are swiftly taking their place. That is, offering up a treasure trove of IP which studios can adapt into blockbuster films. Now on paper, horror video games seem like a fine fit for the cinematic treatment, given their emphasis on atmosphere and startling creature designs. So with that in mind, I'm Ellie for What Culture, and these are 10 horror video game movies everyone wants to see. Number 10, Outlast. Let's kick things off with a video game that couldn't wear its cinematic influences any more proudly on its sleeve. Outlast is a first-person survival horror franchise where players must use a camcorder to navigate through the dark. The night vision aesthetic clearly reminiscent of found-footage horror films such as Wreck and Grave Encounters, among many others. Outlast and its sequel are renowned as two of the scariest horror games of the past decade, and with their DNA already so firmly rooted in the visual language of cinema, why not make an actual movie out of them? And of all the games on this wish list, Outlast is probably the one most likely to actually happen, given that Lionsgate announced last October that they were indeed developing an Outlast movie. Obviously, this doesn't mean the film will happen, considering the many announced video game movies that never come to fruition, but given the generally lower budget nature of found footage fare, the odds are certainly looking good. Number 9, The Evil Within. Capcom are undeniable pioneers of the survival horror genre, and in 2014, The Evil Within proved beyond any doubt that Resident Evil and Dino Crisis director Shinji Mikami still had the sauce. With its intoxicatingly ambient, nightmarish world, The Evil Within basically already looks like a movie, a fact surely aided by the game's somewhat contentious 2.35:1 aspect ratio. Capcom did, however, later patch a full screen option into the game to appease aggrieved players. Anyway, the vibe of the game's world, the utterly nauseating monsters you encounter throughout, and the generally gruesome brutality add up to one of the most unnerving horror games of the last 15 years. Not to ignore its also great sequel. The Evil Within being a dormant IP at present makes a movie adaptation less likely, but the central hook of the series is broad enough that a film could easily also appeal to those who've never even heard of the games. Number 8, Bloodborne. It goes without saying that a movie adaptation of any From Software game would spark massive interest. And with respect to the horror genre, a Bloodborne film would almost certainly be a bona fide smash hit. The beautifully gothic, Lovecraftian aesthetic and unrelentingly intense tone are perfect for a big-budget horror blockbuster. And if a film adaptation can capture even just a fraction of the sumptuous creativity of the game, it would probably be a stone-cold banger. Bloodborne's mysterious lore might be a tad tricky to adapt to the requirements of a mainstream horror tempo, especially as a Bloodborne film done right wouldn't come cheap. But with the right filmmaker leading the charge, this could be something really special indeed. Back in 2023, rumours started doing the rounds that Sony were indeed developing a Bloodborne film, and were even interested in Adam Wingard to direct with Bill Skarsgård to star. As of yet though, nothing concrete has been confirmed. Given that Bloodborne remains phenomenally popular a decade after its release, despite still being trapped on the PS4, the interest is definitely there, and the recent success of HBO's The Last of Us TV series makes it clear that Sony is taking their adaptations dead seriously these days. Number 7, Dino Crisis. When Dino Crisis was released in 1999, it was basically marketed as Resident Evil with dinosaurs. A killer hook which the game absolutely delivered on. And given the enduring popularity of dinosaurs on the big screen, it's honestly surprising that Capcom hasn't made moves to develop a Dino Crisis movie, especially with the storming success of their various Resident Evil films. Considering that the Jurassic Park franchise continues to print money regardless of quality, audiences are clearly absolutely insatiable for dinosaurs, and the appeal to taking that formula in the direction of an R-rated survival horror movie speaks for itself. Granted, it wouldn't be cheap, and the R rating would probably make many studios nervous, as well as the fact that the last Dino Crisis game, Dino Crisis 3, was released all the way back in 2003. Here's what Capcom needs to do. Finally announce a new Dino Crisis game, whether a remake of the original or a new sequel, to reignite mainstream interest in the IP, and then get that damn movie going. Number 6, Little Nightmares. Little Nightmares is a wonderfully creative puzzle platformer franchise renowned for its bleak style and sublimely creepy character design. And so it's easy to appreciate how this would make for a killer movie. Animation is the obvious way to go here, given the heightened nature of the story, characters, and art style, which would be far trickier and far more expensive to pull off in a live-action production. A stop-motion style, in the vein of, say, Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio or most of Laika's output, would be a perfect fit for the world of Little Nightmares, delivering a dark fairy tale for both adults and more adventurous younger viewers. There are some undeniable challenges though, namely that the games are wordless adventures where the story is conveyed solely through the environment, an approach which many studios would likely consider too risky. Then again, the wordless approach didn't stop Latvian animation Flow recently winning the Best Animated Film Oscar and grossing $36 million worldwide, so audiences are definitely fine without dialogue if the images are impactful enough. Number 5. Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice. Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice is one of the most cinematic with a capital C video games of the past decade. A haunting, mesmerizing horror fantasy odyssey following Senua, a warrior who fights her way to Helheim while struggling with intense psychosis. It's incredibly easy to appreciate how Hellblade's striking visual style, emphasis on atmospheric sound, and iconic lead character could easily make for a highly compelling movie, while also offering an uncommonly deep meditation on mental health in the horror arena. Plus, the casting for Senua is already done, given that the game's lead actress, Melina Juergens, won numerous awards for her performance and is a statuesque part of the franchise in her own right. Why look to anyone else to play Senua on screen? Furthermore, a Hellblade movie could be realistically made for a mid-budget price tag of, say, around $50 million, assuming it was as modestly scaled as the source material, of course. Given that the so-so gameplay is by far the most criticized aspect of both Hellblade games, why not take it away entirely and simply let audiences savor the audio-visual experience? Number 4. Soma. Soma is one of the most intense and unforgettable horror games of the last decade. A game which so perfectly bottled the fear of isolation and the claustrophobic terror of the ocean depths. Though the film would certainly be unable to conceal some of the game's surprises without a first-person perspective, unless it went the found footage route, the setting, mood, and enemies encountered throughout offer plenty of foundation for a chilling, dread-inducing horror movie. Soma's musings on identity and our relationship with technology are just as timely as they were when the game first came out, if not more so. And if the filmmakers can resist the urge to deign to jump scares or obvious horror tropes in favour of a psychological slow burn, then a Soma film could be absolutely unforgettable. Factoring in everything that made the game so great wouldn't be easy, but if it found the right filmmaking team, Soma could be unlike anything else in cinematic horror right now. Number 3. Still Wakes the Deep. Now we have by far the newest game on this list, Still Wakes the Deep, which takes clear inspiration from John Carpenter's The Thing, revolving around an extraterrestrial monster which descends upon a remote oil drilling platform in the North Sea. Still Wakes the Deep has vibes for days, from its deeply eerie remote setting to the unsettling nature of the entity itself, and of course the uniqueness of its Scottish cast of characters. The gameplay is far and away the least interesting thing about the game, which is really a walking simulator with mild, mostly unchallenging survival horror elements. And so it's easy to see how the story, characters, and especially the atmosphere would make for an innately terrifying horror film. Given that body horror is having a bit of a moment in Hollywood right now, per the awards success of The Substance, what better time to get this one in front of cameras? Number 2. Dead Space. Are there any horror games better suited for the big screen treatment than Dead Space? With its claustrophobic sci-fi setting, terrifying body horror aspect, and clear potential for some gnarly, unique action sequences, all the ingredients are here for a sci-fi horror romp in the vein of Event Horizon. And considering the IP's popularity, it's a genuine surprise that this one hasn't happened yet. Hell, genre legend John Carpenter even talked up his own desire to make a Dead Space movie back in 2023, and while Carpenter probably isn't a good fit for a big-budget horror blockbuster at this stage of his career, the story, aesthetics, and overall atmosphere of the game will translate to the cinematic medium virtually wholesale. Granted, it wouldn't be a cheap undertaking to get it right, and the video game franchise is currently on ice due to 2023's remake of the original game underperforming commercially, but the overall concept is straightforward enough enough that a movie adaptation could easily be a breakout hit with mainstream non-gamer horror fans. Number 1. System Shock 2. And finally, System Shock 2 is one of the most iconic video games of all time, regardless of genre, and marked a more overt pivot into survival horror territory compared to its more action-adventure-flavoured predecessor. The premise alone is perfectly ripe for a film treatment, centred around a soldier who is unexpectedly woken from cryosleep on board a spaceship and finds themselves facing off against both infected crew members and the malevolent AI supercomputer known as Shodan. It goes without saying that Shodan is an iconic video game villain who could translate to a terrifying big screen presence incredibly easily. And if decades of horror cinema have proven anything, it's that a dimly lit tin can of a spaceship makes for an instantly pulse-quickening setting. More than 25 years after the game's release, System Shock 2's themes, centered around AI and technological supremacy, feel more relevant than ever. And so there's perhaps never been a better time for a System Shock movie to happen. Here's hoping.